Hello my Fireflies, and welcome back to the Cyan Firefly. It's me, Lyiat
and Azilie.
And we are here with the Neverwinter Beta yet again. What else could we be possibly making a video about?
I can think of a lot of things, but...
Yes, we are actually taking a look at the races in the game, and basically what you might be seeing in the future and currently. So... let's pop into new character and actually show you what they have so far. Now, there is 2 races actually missing from this list. Azilie, what are they?
At the moment, we're missing the Standard Drow, we're missing the Menzoberranzan and Renegade.
Yes, and there are other races that may be made in the future that are also, of course, missing from here. Now, let's actually talk about what's on here for now. What race should we start with? Let's start with humans, shall we?
I was actually gonna say that. Let's start with mundane.
Now, of all the civilized races, humans are the most adaptable and diverse. Human settlements can be found almost anywhere, and human morals, customs, and interests can vary greatly. Humans can have the ability to add +2 to any ability score. They have versatile defense, which increases their defense rating by 3%, and they have heroic effort. You gain an additional heroic feat point at levels 10, 15, and 20.
Seems pretty standard.
Yes, so humans are your run-of-the-mill. They're your basic race. There is really nothing special to them. They are...
I think that's what makes human characters special in most fantasy genres, because they really don't have much special about them. They don't have wings, they don't have horns, they're typically not all that magical.
Well, what makes them special in the D&D universe is their adaptability. They can
Exactly.
take any role. And that kind of mirrors here, because you can unlike any other race in the game, you can actually choose where you want your +2 ability score from any ability. You also gain some general use stuff. For instance, you can increase your defense by 3%, which is good for any class. Granted, it's a little better for the tankier classes. And you also have a heroic effort, which gives you additional feat points, which can allow you to specialize yourself in ways that other classes simply, other races simply couldn't. Lore-wise, humans range everywhere. They are basically found all across Faerun. So
Toril, Faerun,
Toril.
Yeah.
Sure Toril isn't Elder Scrolls?
No, it's D&D.
Oh, I'm thinking of Tamriel. Either way, you'll find them all across Faerun. They range everywhere. They are all dispositions, good, neutral, evil. You can find them of all class professions. They can be anything that they set their minds to. And very similar fashion in this game. It's decent for any class. It's not going to be the best, but you can play this particular race as any class and you will still be decent at it.
It's the roundabout race is what it really comes down to. I would even go so far as saying it's a really good starter race when you're... Even in, like, tabletop, human is always a good race to start off with. If you want to get your feet wet, this is the character race you want to go for.
Alright, moving on to Dwarf. Male and female.
The females don't have beards, come on, man.
Okay, so dwarves. Carved from the bedrock of the universe, dwarves endured an age of servitude to giants before winning their freedom. Their mighty mountain fortress cities testify the power of their ancient empires. Even those who live in human cities are counted among the staunchest defenders against the darkness that threatens to engulf the world. Dwarves have the ability to get a +2 to Constitution and then a +2 to Strength or Wisdom. They also have Stand Your Ground, which is increased resistance to knock and repel effects, and Cast Iron Stomach, which gives them an increased damage resistance to damage over time, otherwise known as dot effects.
Right.
So, dwarves are your classic race. They are present in basically every single fantasy setting ever, except for the Elder Scrolls, and that's because they are extinct. That is the one exception I can really think of. But yeah, dwarves. there isn't really much to say about dwarves that hasn't already been said in the universe. My particular favorite dwarf is Gimli, but that has nothing to do with D&D whatsoever.
Bruenor Battlehammer.
Bruenor Battlehammer, fair enough. Bruenor Battlehammer is a character from the...
R.A. Salvatore's Forgotten Realms series.
Yes, Icewind Dale. Very good.
All of them. Icewind Dale, Crystal Shard.
Yes, but his Icewind Dale trilogy, that's where Bruenor Battlehammer really shines. But anyway, ignoring...
Well, I'll give you that, but he really sort of comes out more in like the more recent novels.
Fair enough.
With the recovery of his homeland. But I'm not going to get into that one.
Fair enough, fair enough. So, the dwarves in this game so far seem to be of the Ironhelm sub-race of dwarves, which is represented by their ability scores in kind of their appearance and background. They are not Draugr, they are not the Firebeards or whatever else have you, the Shieldhelm dwarves or the Shieldbreaker dwarves or all the other sub-races that are present in Faerun. It is really the Ironhelm. And they are basically the same kind of dwarves that Battlehammer himself was. The dwarf, I can never remember his name, the dwarf from the original Neverwinter Nights 2, the one who wanted to be a monk. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. These classes are... This race is basically specialized towards your fightier classes, your tankier classes, your great weapon fighter, and your...
meat shields.
Yeah,
generalized
your guardian
meat shields.
fighter. They also make for pretty decent devote clerics.
I've noticed that from seeing some of the playthrough footage.
I mean, it's kind of a good idea to have a decent intellect score, so keep that in mind when you're rolling up a devoted cleric. But their +2 to wisdom and their +2 to constitution cannot be denied. That is actually a really good thing for a devoted cleric to have, because it makes them rather tanky, because the +2 to constitution increases their HP, and then the +2 to wisdom increases all of their cleric-related abilities. So, very important.
That's always a good thing.
So, if you want to roll with a devoted cleric, do consider playing a dwarf, because it's not a bad choice. Like I said, if you want to play a guardian fighter, your best choice here is likely dwarf. You can also go halfling, but we're not talking about halflings yet. But yeah, guardian fighter is primarily going to be dominated by dwarves, and great weapon fighter, not a bad choice.
Now, I do have a question, because I remember you rolling up a dwarf character in this past beta.
Female.
And
kind of looks like this, actually.
Well, yeah, but you did make mention that there was something related to the character creation that reminded you of the Duergar.
Oh, yes. Let's see. Guardian fighter, yep. Yep. None of this really matters. But I went in here, and you can have a fairly dark-skinned dwarf, which is pretty amusing, because that doesn't really match the Battlehelm dwarves at all. But you can go in and you can make the... it doesn't appear to be there anymore.
Maybe they edited it.
Yeah, there was an option here to actually have eye glow instead. And that's pretty interesting, because normal dwarves' eyes do not glow. Only Draugr, dark, deep dwarves,
yeah,
actually have glowing eyes. But it kind of looks like they removed that feature for now.
Kind of makes you suspect whether or not they're actually going to either introduce the Duergar as an NPC character.
Duergar or Draugr?
I pronounce it Duergar. I don't know. I pronounce it phonetically.
I might be thinking of something from the Elder Scrolls, Draugr. I think that actually might be the name for dwarf in the Elder Scrolls.
That might be. I pronounce it phonetically, so I pronounce it Duergar. But
yeah.
That option now being removed kind of makes me suspect, well, maybe that was either a mistake, or they're considering doing the same thing that they're doing for the Menzbarans and Renegade for the Drow. Maybe a Duergar is going to be something for a dwarf.
I'm really worried about these premium races, but we can discuss that once we get to the Menzbarans and Renegade. Well, I can't select it. We do have a character who is a Menzbarans and Renegade, and I won't exactly tell you how we actually managed to do that, but it is pretty cool. So, moving on to Wood Elf, and I specify Wood Elf.
Originally, that was just flat Elf, and
yes.
then they added it in this beta, or was it the previous one?
I think it was this one.
Yeah.
Alright, So, wild and free, wood elves guard their forest lands using stealth and deadly arrows from the trees. They build their home in close harmony with the forest, so perfectly joined that travelers often fail to notice that they have entered a wood elf community until it is too late. Now they have elven accuracy, which increases their chance to critically strike by 1%, wild step, which gives them a 10% resistance to effects that slow your movement, and they have a +2 to dexterity, a +2 to intelligence, or a +2 to wisdom. So they're a very effective race. They are pretty good at many things. You can play this as a devoted cleric, you can play this as a controller wizard, and you can play this, of course, as a rogue. Now, the interesting thing about wood elves is that in the normal game, they are actually very closely spec'd to actually favor archer rangers, or even dual-wielding rangers. Yeah. And that is a class that we haven't seen from the game yet.
And a class that a lot of people are really clamoring for, too.
Now, something else interesting is that some people have deep compiled the game. They've looked through the game files, and they have seen game files that mention Archer and Scourge. Now, Archer is, of course, a build for the Ranger class, so we may very well see Archers very soon. Scourge, on the other hand, is a specialty build for Warlocks, so we might actually see Warlocks fairly soon as well. And Warlock would actually be a Tiefling, primarily. But aside from that, so wood elves. Now, I specifically say wood elves because these are wood elves. This is actually has nothing to do with what you think an elf would be, the wizards, as they were in 3.5. That's what, if you took an elf, you probably wanted to go with a wizard. They actually split it into two different things as they went into 4.0. Wood elves are what you classically think of as elves. Your Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, your Mirkwood elves, your Legolas,
yeah, your Legolas.
Elrond.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Elrond, a little less so. More like Eowyn.
Eowyn.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. Elrond was more of a magey kind of person, but that's
True enough.
aside. So, yeah, it's your forest-dwelling, you know, secret community, hippie druid kind of thing. Now, what they added was the Eladrin, the elves that live in the Feywild, the elves that are more like Fey, more like fairies, the more arcane, mysterious elves. Now, these are actually the moon elves, the gray elves, as opposed to the wood elves or the forest elves. They are the arcane masters, they are the more magically inclined, they are the sorcerers, and they aren't in the game yet. Now, I don't know if they will actually go with the word Eladrin, because that is not used in Faerun. Moon Elf is. Yes. And there are Moon Elf communities very close to Neverwinter. I am
Silvery
well aware.
Moon.
Yes, Silvery Moon.
Being one of the biggest ones.
I do know that, for instance, Drizdur knows a large Moon Elf community.
Silvery Moon.
Yeah. But, yes, that is, again, I think your Golden Elves would also count as Eladrin. Sun Elves.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm not sure if they are Eladrin because they are not mentioned in the Forgotten Realms book at all. But
I've never seen them mentioned, so...
Like I said, this is primarily Wood Elves. Your lore is that you are a forest dweller, you are not an arcane master. Your class is... your race is good for controller wizards, but I have a feeling that Eladrin are going to be that much better.
If they decide to incorporate...
Now, theorycrafting a little bit, Eladrin, because of their racial traits in 4.0, have certain capabilities. For instance, they have a wild step. That's not really the word I was looking for. It's basically it's a teleportation ability where they can shift a number of squares. No. They can shift a number of squares freely. Now, controller wizards can already do that, so I'm kind of wondering how they're going to incorporate something like that. Maybe if you're playing an Eladrin, you can dodge further than any other race. That might be kind of interesting.
It's a possibility.
I also see specializations around intellect, wisdom, and maybe charisma, rather than...
Considering that the race is canonically more geared towards the arcane, that would make the most sense.
Rather than dexterity, because that's really a, down and dirty fighting kind of deal. Alright, so who do we want to move on to next?
Why don't we hit the halflings?
Halflings? Okay, the short little people. From Baguette? Nope, wrong canon.
Actually, I think halflings in D&D are slightly taller than hobbits.
Either way.
Kind of throwing that out there. I think they're canonically taller.
Halflings are a small race known for their resourcefulness, quick wits, and steady nerves. They are nomadic folk who roam waterway and marshlands. No people travel further or see more of what happened in the world than halflings. So they get a +2 to dexterity, a +2 to charisma, and a +2 to constitution. They also have nimble reaction. Your small stature and quick movements gain a 3% chance to deflect incoming attacks. And then bold, your fearless nature increases your resistance to crowd control effects by 10%. This makes them excellent trickster rogues.
Oh, most definitely.
Because they can basically position themselves very, very easily. They can move around without much worry about control effects. They can slip around people unnoticed, and they can deal a lot of damage because of their increased charisma and their increased dexterity. Conversely, you can actually make them into very, very decent guardian fighters, which is something I really didn't expect. Because of their ability to deflect, which is better for rogues than it is guardian fighters, it's still pretty decent for a guardian fighter, because they can significantly reduce the amount of damage incoming on them. And they can also, again, increase their resistance to crowd control effects by 10%, which is rather important for any tanky class. Again, it helps trickster rogues a lot, because that's kind of what they're going to have to be avoiding, is crowd control effects when they're trying to position to get combat advantage. But it's still a very decent thing for them to have. Now, I know you guys can't see this, but Azilie is kind of nodding her head off. Alright, but yes, those are your halflings, which are a classic race that shows up in D&D a lot. I believe this is modeled after the Lightfoot halfling subrace. There are two. There are the light feet, and then there are the I can't remember.
I can't either, and I used to know this too.
But they're kind of like your Tooks from Lord of the Rings. They are very adventurous. They are more like
ridiculously so.
Yeah,
just look at Regis.
Yeah, they're more like the waterway.
Actually, Regis is probably a bad example.
They're more like the waterway hobbits. They like to travel. They like to adventure. Kind of like Bilbo Baggins, really. They're your burglars. That's actually Lord of the Rings is why halflings are the way that they are in D&D. That's kind of why this entire race is a very traveling, happy-go-lucky race. In vanilla and D&D, their patron deity is Garl Glittergold, I believe. Garl
Glittergold. Say that 10 times fast.
Who is the patron of travelers, walkers, and, of course, gold. So, there you are. That is halflings. I do not think we have anything else to say them, other than the fact that, you know, iconic halflings include Regis, the bastard with the ruby. Again, a well-known character in the Icewind Dale trilogy. The Crystal Shard, all that fun stuff. We forgot to mention the most famous human of them all, which is Elmister. And then there's, of course, Artemis Entreri.
Artemis Entreri, Wolfgar, son of Bunagar.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of a little disappointed that there's no real berserker class. I mean...
Barbarian, you mean?
Yeah.
That might be something added later on. Great Weapon Fighter fills that niche for right now.
True enough, but it's like, there isn't a look that says Barbarian.
Well, I'll explain that a little later, as we get to the Half-Orc, but...
No, true, yeah.
Alright, so, Halfling, Wood Elf... I don't think we mentioned a famous Wood Elf, other than extraneous sources, but whatever. Oh, for humans you also have Mon from Baldur's Gate.
Oh, yeah.
And Edwin and Minsk.
How can we... Oh my god, go for the eyes. Yeah, how can we forget Minsk?
Alright, so let's move on to half-elves.
Yes.
Descended from elves and humans, half-elves are a vital race in which the best features of elves and humans often appear. So they have their ability scores, which is a +2 to Constitution, a +2 to Charisma, or a +2 to Wisdom. So they get the +2 to Constitution, and then they get +2 to Charisma or Wisdom, which makes them very good devoted clerics. Otherwise, you can roll them as a controller wizard if you want to. You could also roll them as a guardian fighter, probably a little less effective. I wouldn't really do them for anything else. So, really, this race should probably stick to devoted cleric. They do have a
Dilettante.
Dilettante, that is a very annoying word, which gives them a +1 to a non-class ability score, which kind of allows them to round out a little bit more than other races would be able to. And then they have Knack for Success, which you are just naturally better at all facets of life, gaining a +2 to Deflect, a +2 to Critical Severity, and a +2 to Gold Find.
That's his +1.
Shut up. So Deflect allows them to mitigate damage. Critical Severity increases how much their crits do. So as opposed to Critical Chance, it's Critical Severity. It's how... when you crit, you gain, like, say, 150% more as damage. This would increase it to 151%. So it stacks with items and stuff like that. It doesn't seem like much, but it can make all the difference.
Oh yeah, when you got things stacking like that.
Yeah. And then, of course, the Gold Find, which increases how much money you make throughout the game. I don't know of any famous half-elves.
I can't think of any either.
Half-elves are actually really not a light class in D&D lore. They are not a race in D&D lore. They are not brought up much at all. A lot of people don't really seem to use them. They are kind of the misfits of two worlds, to be honest. And, you know, humans don't really like them because they feel that they're, you know, elves. They're prudish kind of people. They're not fully human. Yeah, you have the uncanny valley, so they look like they're supposed to be human, but they're not. They're kind of off, and they're not really trusted. And then as far as elf societies go, they're a little bit more accepted in elven societies, but typically they're looked down upon. They're treated as second-class citizens a lot of the time. So from
their human blood makes them brutish. And...
so from a roleplay perspective, it is... you're going to have a lot of anger stemming from your childhood from being a displaced child. That
was in one of the more recent tabletop games that we ended up playing. I was actually playing a half-elf, and that was a big part of the DM's canon story, was that...
I'd like to take a moment right now and state that while Azilie and I do play tabletops a lot, we are not role-playing in online MMOs.
Oh, no. Hell no.
I find that as a silly thing. While I will make role-playing suggestions to people, I do not personally role-play in MMOs. I don't see the point.
I don't see how it can work, but that's just me.
Anyway,
But yeah, like... I like that dynamic.
Yes.
That conflict.
So... there you are. That is the half-elf in a nutshell. We have tieflings.
Woohoo! Tieflings!
Heirs to an ancient infernal bloodline, tieflings have no realms of their own, but instead live within human kingdoms and cities. They are descended from human nobles who bargained with dark powers, and long ago their empire subjugated half the world, but the empire was cast down into ruin, and tieflings were left to make their own way in a world that often fears and resents them. Now, this is somewhat of a retcon. Tieflings weren't really all that big in 3.5 and 3.0 in Faerun. They did mention in 4.0 that tieflings had a huge, massive empire, but that was never actually mentioned in Faerun ever. So, while it was canon for 4.0, it was never really canon for Faerun, so they kind of retconned that in. As far as famous tieflings go, there is a tiefling in Neverwinter Nights 2 that is a pretty famous character. I can never remember any of the character names from that game. As much as I love that game, I can't remember anybody from it, but she is a rogue. She is she's a character of a dubious nature, to be sure. She is chaotic neutral, I believe, and she loves to steal.
Love her already.
Alright, so what do these guys do? They have a +2 to Charisma, and then they can get a +2 to Constitution or a +2 to Intelligence. And then they have Blood Hunt, which they deal an additional 5% damage to targets below half health, or otherwise known as bloodied. And then they have Infernal Wrath. Whenever you are hit, you have a 10% chance to lower the power of an attacker by 5% for 5 seconds. So they are extremely good trickster rogues. They are very good controller wizards. And I'm assuming you could make an argument to make them into halfway decent great weapon fighters. I would not go Guardian Fighter, and I would not go Devoted Cleric with these guys. Largely because of a lack of wisdom and a lack of strength. Constitution, you could make the argument, but really, these guys are focused on dealing damage. That is really their mainstay.
Oh, most definitely.
Now, like I said, Tieflings have never really been super big in D&D lore. While there are some characters you can point to, they just aren't the forerunners in any real books that I can think of.
Which I find kind of disappointing because they are a very...
Nishka.
Yes, that was her name.
Nishka. Ah, yes. Knew it. Anyway. But yeah, they're never really the forerunners in any big D&D thing.
Yeah, and like I was saying, I find that kind of disappointing because their story is very interesting. And again, it comes back to me liking that internal conflict when it comes to a novel or a game. That personal struggle. Like, if you have a character like this taking the forefront of any book or series, it would just make for some fantastic characterization.
Now, I like to point out here a little phrase here, Infernal Bloodline. Now, of course, Infernal makes you think of hell. However, Infernal, specifically in D&D, means devils. It's not demons, it is devils. Devils and demons are not the same thing in D&D lore. These are the descendants of the devils. They are lawful evil, not chaotic evil. Or in new D&D, they are evil, not chaotic evil.
Right.
Now, there is a very noticeable line there. As opposed to being chaotic evil, which are just mindless engines of destruction, they want to watch the world burn. Your Joker, they are more like your Lex Luthor. They are very dominating. They want to control the world and corrupt it. They are corruptors. Now, Tieflings themselves vary along the spectrum. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but keep in mind that they are drawn to law. They are lawful. They are more lawfully aligned. They follow strict rules, a strict code of honor, a strict hierarchy. That's why they ran an empire rather than roving barbarian tribes like orcs. So those are your Tieflings. Now
Lots of hearts.
now we have your Half-Orcs.
Yes. I'm actually kind of surprised that they decided to use this as holy crap.
Yes.
Whoa, that's like a wall of
actually...
Holy crap.
Yeah, as you were saying, I'm actually really surprised that they decided to go with Half-Orc as opposed to Dragonborn. Now, why is this surprising? Well, that's because 4.0, Half-Orcs were not statted out until the second player's handbook. The races that were statted out in the vanilla handbook, the first handbook, were humans, dwarves, wood elves,
Drow.
Eladrin. No,
I'm sorry, yeah,
Drow
Drow were in
statted
the
out yet.
second.
No, they weren't mentioned in any player's hand guide. They were mentioned in the Forgotten Realms guide.
That's right.
Anyway, humans, dwarves, wood elves, Eladrin, half-elves, tieflings, halflings, and dragonborn. Yes. Then with the Forgotten Realms book, you had Drow, specifically Drow, not Dark Elves, and then you had Ganassi.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot about them.
They went with half-orcs as opposed to Ganassi or Dragonborn, which is kind of a surprising move. I'm very surprised that they went in that direction. I mean, hell, Half-Orcs aren't really all that favored in D&D lore again. A lot of people don't really play them unless they're like playing the tabletop and want to roll a twinked out fighter or barbarian.
Yeah. Typically, they're always the bad guys. They're the villains that you'll run into.
Yeah, half-orcs are quite often used as a villain in D&D lore and in D&D games. Every once in a while, you run into the misunderstood character, but that doesn't happen all that often. But anyway, half-orcs combine the best qualities of humans and orcs, though some would argue that the good qualities of orcs are few and hard to find. From their orc blood, half-orcs inherit great physical strength and toughness. They are fierce warriors, fleet of foot as they charge into battle. Their ability scores are a +2 to dexterity, and then they get either a +2 to constitution or strength, which is a really weird split if you think about it.
Yeah.
Typically, you would have constitution and strength as opposed to constitution or strength. So, Then you have Furious Assault. Your critical hits deal an additional 5% damage, and then Swift Charge. You gain a plus 10% bonus to run speed for 3 seconds when you enter combat. This effect can only occur once every 20 seconds. So your half-orcs make really good guardian fighters and really good great weapon fighters. You can also make an argument for trickster rogues. Dexterity and strength.
Yeah, I can sort of see it.
Primary attributes for trickster rogues are dexterity, strength, and charisma.
Right.
You're getting +2 to 2 of those. Then you have your Furious Assault, which increases your critical hits, and then your Swift Charge, which allows you to move around the battlefield really quickly for positioning.
I can see it looking at all of the statistics of it. I can see it. But in my mind...
Statistically, it makes sense. Lore-wise, it's a little weird. I get what you mean.
That's what I'm getting screwed up with. Like, I see an orc, I see this big, beefy,
you're not
character.
You're not thinking of a sneaky little bastard with 2 daggers backstabbing people. No, that's... But they are actually really decent rogues. But, great weapon fighter is really what they're spec'd for this because of their +2 dexterity, and then you can go to +2 to strength, which can allow you to whirl into combat, deal a lot of critical hits in a large area, and then charge around from person to person.
Which is just unfair.
Granted, great weapon fighter is still a defender class. It's still... It's more made to punish people who aren't really paying attention to you and deal a lot of damage, but that's something that a class-specific video will be for, not this kind of video. But there you go. So that's the race in a nutshell. We can't really point to any famous half-orcs, unfortunately. Sorry.
Because again, typically there aren't any.
As a race, they typically worship Groomsh.
Evil deity.
Yes,
so,
but they typically
yeah.
worship Groomsh unless they're good aligned, which is rare, but then they can worship Torm, a bunch of other types of gods. I'd probably go with Torm for this in this particular game, because that's the only one that really makes too much sense for them. But again, that's all lore stuff. You're free to pick whatever you want for your character, justify it however you want. Just, if you really want to roleplay in this game, just don't make a Mary Sue, god damn it. Don't make another Driz Duarden. Alright, so popping out of this, we're going to actually hop into the game and show you a little bit of the Mesoberenzan Renegade, and we're also going to talk about Drow while we're at it. Yes, I'm aware that I've been defeated. Yes, come on, thank you. Poor Azilie. Alright, so this is the Mesoberenzan Renegade. You do not have access to Drow yet, but we were able to access the Mesoberenzan Renegade through what I think was a bug. I don't think it was they were actually intending people to actually try out this class. That said, I did speak to somebody about it and we're fine. So I'm not actually in trouble for having this character, but basically I logged in at one point, went to go to make the character creation, and it brought me straight to Mesoberenzan Renegade. Like, it wasn't selectable on the screen, it just said Mesoberenzan Renegade.
Yeah, and every time, if you went in further to do the character selection, it wouldn't be there. You back out, and then it'd be like this...
Pop back in, and the Mesoberenzan Renegade was there. It was strange.
Confusing as hell.
It wasn't a selectable choice, but it did automatically bring you to it. Now, Mesoberenzan Renegades and Drow get a +2 to Dexterity flat, and then I think they gain an optional... Intelligence or Charisma. Don't quote me on that, though. I think that's what it is.
That'd make the most sense, I would think. Yeah.
But then they also have the ability Trance, which allows them to recover at campfires twice as quickly as normal. And then they also have Fairy Fire, which you have a 5% chance when attacking a foe to apply Fairy Fire for 4 seconds, reducing its power and defense by 6%. This is mirrored by Dark Fire for the Drow, which does the same thing, I believe.
Yeah.
I do not see an animation accompanying it, though, so it is basically the same ability, it is just named differently. Now, the only thing that makes the Mesoberenzan Renegade different from the Drow is that their skin is slightly lighter, they have some unique tattoo options, and they have one unique background option that isn't in the game yet, which allows them to come from Mesoberenzan, the same place that Driz Duerden came from. By the way, this is what their face looks like, if you so desire to take a look at it. Here you go. Very pretty. Blind. We decided to make this character blind. Yeah, we just like the silvery eye effect. But, alright. But that's really all there is to it. So, as far as famous Drow go, you have your Driz Duerden.
Matron Bairn.
What's his name?
Crap. Jarlaxle.
Jarlaxle.
Jarlaxle!
Yeah. So, there you go. Those are your famous Drow. I do not have a text description for Drow, but basically what Drow are is that they are the cast-out worshippers of Lolth. There was basically there was a large group of gods that all elves worshipped. And I forget the original name of her, but she was the wife of Corellian Latharan. And she became
with an S, I think. I can't remember.
She became very vain, and she eventually led an uprising of elves against Corellian Latharan. And Corellian Latharan cast her out and cast out all of her worshippers and cursed them. So it afflicted their skin. They became dark elves, and they were banished underground. The sun hurt them. They could not stand to be in the sun. And that's basically the entire background of them. They are elves, but they are dark mirrors of elves. So Trickster
Corrupted.
Yes.
A really good way of...
That said, there are some good elves. In fact, dark elves. In fact, if you're playing Mesoberenzan Renegade, you are playing a good dark elf. You could
Relatively speaking, I remember seeing a couple of...
Mesoberenzan Renegade is specified, like, in the lore of this game to be a good elf. An elf that escaped Mesoberenzan because they didn't like it. Other Drow, you could roleplay as being bad, but in this, Mesoberenzan Renegades are specifically kind of hinted to be good.
It kind of squicks my canon just a little bit after being an avid reader of R.A. Salvador's works, and, like, to me, Drow are they're my favorite character.
I think it's the word renegade that they're focusing on here, rather than just dark elf from Mesoberenzan. You know, if you're a renegade, you're kind of going against the norm. You don't like how society was, so you left it. Anyway.
Yeah, but I don't know. For some reason, just kind of in my mind, it just seems to be implying that the group is fairly large when it really wouldn't be. And I don't know. To me, that just kind of feels...
Either way, there might have been something that happened in Mesoberenzan after the Spell Plague where a bunch of Dark Elves fled. You don't know.
True enough.
And either way,
I don't know. Maybe they're playing a little bit into the War of the Spider Queen series of novels. I don't know.
Anyway, so class-wise, you've got your Trickster Rogue, which it's really good at, and you also kind of have your Controller Wizard. Theory crafting a little bit. I also think Warlock is going to be pretty good for this class. And maybe Archer, Ranger, dual-wielding Ranger, obviously.
Oh.
When they finally make that class, I guarantee you Dark Elves will be the best for it, simply because people will not... Bianco, what are you doing? Simply because fans are not going to accept anything less if you're not going to be capable of making a very good dual-wielding Ranger with a Drow. People are going to flip their shit. That's just the long and short of it, because people are going to want to make Driz Duerden, as stupid as that is. But
didn't we already run into like a foundry quest where
it was Drizzle Doer.
Yeah,
and it was a female.
Oh god.
Yeah, that was stupid.
No.
Yeah, we ran into a foundry quest that basically had a bunch of rip-offs of characters from the Icewind Dale trilogy, except for Regis, who was a literal character from the Icewind Dale trilogy. He even had his Ruby, which was stupid as what all get out, but okay, so that's a look at the races that are currently in the game. We did theorycraft a couple of races that may be in the game in the future. Dragonborn, Ganassi, Eladrin. We will probably see those in the future. They did say that they will be making more races. My current concern is that they're going to be premium races.
Yeah, like the Renegade.
Like, I can't actually compare the Renegade to the Drow, but if I go into this Powers Fairy Fire, 6%, I think the Drow is actually 5%. This actually might be a little bit more powerful than the Drow's Darkfire. It was a post on the main page for the website, and it had some of the stats for the Drow.
But somebody went in there and cracked it a little bit?
No, they like announced it themselves when they announced that the Drow was in the game. Another annoying thing is that they've restricted Drow from the normal players. Normal players will not be able to play Drow. I believe it is from somewhere between 3 and 6 months after the game comes out.
Oof.
So not only will people who don't buy the Champions of the North pack not be able to get the Mesorenz and Renegade, they will not be able to play Drow in general for a long time, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about controversies in this particular episode. So Ganassi, Eladrin, Dragonborn, maybe Draugr. Yanti Purebloods might be a thing.
That'd be interesting.
What else is there? Gnomes.
that would actually be really cool to see.
Well, they're a classic race that has appeared in a lot of D&D material, so I would not be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised either. I'm actually kind of surprised that it's not one of the base races.
There are also some other races that are in 4.0. We could potentially see Goliaths, half-giants, that sort of thing. All depends on where they go with it. So,
if anything, most of these we might end up seeing as being simply NPCs.
I'm just
similar to
really
how some races
hoping that they aren't going to be premium races that you have to pay for.
Yeah. That would be a major disappointment.
And I'm really hoping that they're not making these premium races more powerful than the normal races. I did once ask them how they are going to avoid the whole ideology of, you know, pay to win. Are these races actually going to be more powerful than the normal races? Is the Mesorenz and Renegade going to be more powerful than the other races? And the guy got a little miffed at me and went on this long speech.
Oh, I remember that.
And he was like, well, we make incentives for people to purchase the game. We make incentives so people are going to spend the money. Okay. But you're not telling me whether or not you're actually trying to avoid pay to win. That doesn't actually make me feel confident. In fact, you're saying
PR.
we're making incentives for you to want to play the game. So is your incentive, if you want to play the game more efficiently, if you want to play the game
buy the perks.
Yeah. If you want to play the game better than anybody else can, you have to buy it. That sounds really concerning to me. So make sure to look at that before you spend money on this game. Just saying. I mean, this game does look very cool. I mean, I'm just hoping they don't screw it up at this point. They haven't really given me the confidence to say that they're not screwing it up.
Yeah. I mean, we gave them that big list of questions that we had, and we still haven't gotten any answers back on that. Yeah. And that, to me, that's ultimately really, that is one of the biggest concerns that I'm having right now, is that we aren't getting the answers that we're asking for, and we know that these are questions that players have been asking.
Anyway, that's something for another day. For now, This has been Lyiat
And Azilie.
with the Cyan Firefly talking about races in Neverwinter, at least in the beta so far. We will catch you all next time. Farewell, Fireflies.
Stay frosty.
See you later.